Officer. Today, we are going to be talking about building positive family relationships. It's our second episode in a series of social cohesion in action. Positive relationships, we're going to be talking about husband and wife relationships, we're going to be talking about parent and child or parent and children relationships, and we want to zoom in a little bit about what's happening at home and how we can seek some help. With me today, you would have heard, it's Mr. Will Campbell, who would be taking us through today's session. Today's session, we want to promote togetherness and bonding during this pandemic that we are in. Mr. Campbell, thank you for being here today with us.
Thank you for having me.
We have been home for more than 10 weeks. Daddy, mommy, children, we've all been home. We're not accustomed to being home for that long period of time. And so we get up, we do our normal chores, we interact, and there's nowhere to go but to interact with each other all day. We have recognized that there are a little bit of issues, if that's not a hard term to use, within the family as we go along. Can you help me to shed some light on some of the things that are happening at home and how we can work on them?
Right, so we touched on this a little bit in a previous discussion that we had. And one of the most important challenges that we deal with is the change and the loss of control. You know, at this point, we kind of are no longer in support, we're no longer in control of, well, some of our own control has been taken from us. And so we are now instructed to stay indoors, for example. We can't come and go as we like. We can't, we're not going to work as we like. The goals and the dreams and so on that we had are all on hold. And so that imposes a kind of a psychological stress on everyone involved. So in addition to that, the adults in the home, the breadwinners, they have to deal with the issue of loss of income in some cases. There are some people who've been laid off their jobs, and there are some people who work on their own, but they are unable to go out now because of the restrictions or because people are no longer purchasing in certain things. So there is the issue of the loss of income. Then families have to deal with the fear. Am I gonna get ill? Is a family member going to become ill? Are my parents, my grandparents who are elderly and maybe who have pre-existing conditions? So there is that. And then on top of that is the issue of having to be in the same space, everybody in the same space at the same time. And for some of us, that it is becoming claustrophobic. In some cases, literally. Some of us have smaller homes. And so, everybody is, in some cases, literally stepping on each other's toes. So those are some of the issues, the stresses that the adults have to face, and then the confinement in one space. Now, sometimes we think that only the adults suffer, but the children are experiencing some of these fears as well, and some of these challenges. Children have to deal with the fact that they can no longer go to school. They're no longer seeing their friends. And some of them might be wondering, will I ever get to go back to school again? Will I ever meet my teacher again? Will I see my friends in school again? So children are also, to use the word a little loosely, traumatized by this whole situation. And those are some of the issues that we're dealing with as a result of some people call it the lockdown that we're experiencing that has come out of the pandemic.
So I want to bring that whole response into context of the husband and wife relationship. So there are severe pressure, I would say, on both individuals, the husband and the wife. And so you find that there are a little bit of edginess between both. So let's talk about communication between the husband and wife, because we believe that whatever emanates from the parents, the children absorb it.
Absolutely.
And so we want to talk a little bit about communication. How do we talk to each other? We observe all these things. We're within a small space, as you said. I've heard in informal conversations that on the dinner table, one person is being scolded for chewing too loudly. So we recognize that we're having dinner together now more often. And these are little things that come up. And if you're not able to talk about it openly and in a very friendly manner, it can become a conflict.
Um, I think what it calls for at first is understanding. If we understand, many times, I mean, you will have experienced this. Everybody has had this experience. You were impatient or upset with someone for something, and when you find out why they are behaving in this way or why they said what they said, what they are going through, then it makes it a little easier for you to bear. And I think that if we could take into consideration the experiences of the other parties, it makes it a little easier for us to understand. So, for example, a wife might find that her husband is a little edgy and, everything is an issue for him. If she is able to put herself in his shoes and realize that his underlying issue is his inability to provide for his family as he's been accustomed to, she might be in a better position to relate to him, understanding that his edginess is not towards her necessarily, but as a result of what he's experiencing as a man unable to provide for his family. The same goes for if it's the other way around. We need to try to understand the other party, the other persons involved. Why are they behaving like this? Now, in terms of communication, and here's another challenge, our routines took us away from each other, and there were fixed things that we talk about. Who's going to pick up the children today? What time you're coming home? When we can go and buy ration. Now it is different. The routines are different, and in fact, we are forced to have to communicate a lot more than before. And our communication had become pre-COVID-19 had become so superficial, really, that we don't, it's uncomfortable now having deeper conversations. So we're sitting at the table, and all we could think about, because we weren't eating together before. I didn't hear you chewing before. Now it's loud and it's annoying and it's bothering me, and it's an issue. And very often, what I'm complaining about is not what is really bothering me. What is bothering me is the fact that I can't go out, that I'm losing money, but now on top of all of that, you're chewing loudly, So I make that an issue when that is not really the issue. Well, we need to communicate with each other from a position of understanding. And the other thing that we need to understand is that we must deal with the issue and not the personality. So let's go back to that example you use of, your irritating chewing. We're all in the same family. I don't hate you. I just dislike the way you chew. And so I must be able to address the way you chew without talking to you like as though you are my enemy. And we don't always remember that. So I start talking to you about like for chew like you have manners, me who you grew up with, and I'm attacking you. And the problem is not you. The problem is that your chewing is irritating me. So we have to learn to attack the issue and not the person. And because when you attack the person, what happens is now you have an enemy. And the two of you have to face the world together. The two of you have to face this reduced budget together. The two of you have to face the fact that we have to, pay for data now so that these children can get the information from school. But then we alienate each other by attacking each other when what we should be doing is dealing with the issues.
Excellent. I want to also, in the context of husband and wife relationship, I want to ask you if you can shed some light on the issue of strengths and weaknesses. I want to address the strengths, especially of the mother, because we know that mommy is responsible for many more things in the house in relation to child rearing than daddy. That's prevalent in our Guyanese society.
Right, that's a traditional role.
Mommy has to do this every single day, and daddy is now stepping in to help. And daddy would say, but child rearing is not my strength. And he's putting that onto mommy. Child rearing is not my strength. But mommy has her own issues too with dealing with the children. And many of us as parents, but we're not given a class on parenting before we even have the baby. This is prevalent in Guyana. And so we are raising children without a proper understanding of what stage of development the child is, what to expect, and so on. And it takes a toll on you as a person. So you will say, that's not my strength. I don't have to do that. That's you. How do we address both parents in this instance within that context?
I think that any organization, any agency, any community works best when a person, your roles coincide with your strengths. So if mommy is better at this, then it's probably best for mommy to do this. Having said that, though, daddy could play a supporting role. He could give mommy a break every now and then. And again, communication is important here because if I'm not used to taking care of the children because I'm out of the home most of the time and I play other roles, but now I'm being asked to do that, then I'm going to need some guidance. So it goes both ways. Now, I have to be humble enough to ask for that guidance, and my partner would have to be patient enough to walk me through that process until I'm at a place where I can, manage this on my own. And that is lacking in a lot of our households. You want someone else to help out, and then you're critical about the work they do, but you don't provide any support that would help them do it the way you think it should be done. So it has to be a supportive relationship, one where I am humble enough to reach out for support and to accept that support, and one where my partner is patient enough and understanding enough to spend some time and walk me through the process and a bit of hand holding until I become strong enough to do this on my own. We assume a lot in our relationships. You're a big man, how you know how to do this? Or you're a woman, you're supposed to know this. We assume all the time that people should know. And I think that is probably one of the biggest reasons we have difficulties with communication and we have difficulties with relationships. We got to stop assuming and we need to start supporting and helping. And reaching out for help as well.
And we know that the children, they usually are smarter in whatever way and whatever they do. And so when they see the parents are not bonding together, the parents really, they're not a team, the children do take advantage of that. And so now we want to talk about the children in the context of building relationships, promoting togetherness and bonding during this time of the pandemic. At Social Cohesion, we know that a happy, healthy family will in turn build a healthy community. And so we want to talk about help for the children. Children should feel safe and secure and loved in their home, and you will see that manifest in their relationship. Mr. Campbell, we want to talk about positive communication between parents and children. How can we do that in this difficult time?
Oh, how much time do you have? This is, this is a college course by itself. Um, like you rightly said, if we're going to set the tone for positive communication or positive parent-child communication, and by the way, we have kind of skewed our discourse to the nuclear family, and we'll stay there a little bit. Being very cognizant of the fact that a very large percentage of our families are actually single-parent families, and then we have blended families and we have extended families. We're talking here in the context of the nuclear family. And a lot of these principles can also be used in the other family constructions. So parents first need to agree on how they are going to deal with the children, because children like you said, they observe a lot more than we give them credit for, even the very small ones. And children know very well which parent to go to ask for what. They know that, if I go ask mommy for this, she can say, well, you're eating too much. But if I go and ask daddy, he'll get it for me. And so there needs to be agreement between or among the adults in the home as to what is allowed, what is acceptable, and what is not. There needs to be that agreement. That, again, requires communication. And let me pause here to say that the fact that my wife and I are not on good terms should not interfere with how we interact in relation to the children. So we need to find an understanding where when we're talking about the children, we put our own differences aside and deal with that. Because, we have situations where, I'm going into dangerous ground here. We have situations where mommy would discipline the child, but because daddy is angry with mommy, he attacks mommy for disciplining the child. So the child feels like, mommy can't tell me nothing no more. So we need to agree for the sake of the children. And when the parents are able to put aside their differences for the sake of the children, we're talking about when it relates to the children. Because we can continue to have our issues, but it should not be brought into our interactions with our children. And that is vital. That is important. And then we need to support one another, each other, depending on how many adults we're talking about here, in their interaction with the children. So if mommy says no, then daddy must say no, and granny must say no, and auntie must say no. If it's yes, then everybody agrees on it. Now, what happens if I don't think that the child should be allowed to do this, but the other adults think that I am wrong? How do we deal with that? We can have that discussion, but out of earshot of the child. So, well, depending on our logistics, we go outside, or we could go into a room and say, look, man, I don't agree with this, and we trash it out there. And then we come out, we show a united front to the child, because children are going to take the path of least resistance, I call it. Whatever is going to give them what they want, that's where they will go. And so we create this polarization sometimes, and sometimes we even use children as pawns. And I know I'm a little off topic here, but these are things that I think are important for us to understand, that children should not be collateral damage for a broken relationship, and we need to come together and work for the benefit of these children. They didn't ask to be here, we brought them here. And so we have to find ways of ensuring that they feel comfortable, that they feel secure, that they feel that they are not living in fear continuously. Let me go back to parent relationship here. If I'm constantly screaming at the other adults in my room, there's, palpable conflict in the room, and the children can hear these fights all the time. They are constantly living in fear. And so they need to be able to see that two people may not agree on the same thing, but they can still get along.
Wonderful. I don't think you are off topic at all, because we've had interaction with our own staff members. We work as a team, so we talk. We try to get through the pandemic being at home while continuing our bond, try to build our bond stronger, even though we're at home. And so we've heard some of those things coming out. How do we stay positive in all of that happening? How do we work as a team at home? We're all here at home, and we have different things that we're accustomed to do. But it's not being done. Somebody wants to do something else. How do we work as a team? We still have the children. They still have to do some amount of schoolwork, and we still have work in the home to be done. But then you find somebody's not doing and that's a source of conflict. Um, I want to take that discussion a little bit further, where the children are asked to do the chores in the house. And so little attention is being paid to keeping them informed with what's happening and paying attention to a little bit of schoolwork, and the focus is more on cleaning the house.
Cleaning and getting chores done around the home,
Getting chores done. And
to the detriment, to the neglect of the schoolwork.
yes, that came to my attention yesterday. And so we talked about an extended family in which the adults are watching Netflix most of the day, and the neighbor observed that the children are doing all of the work in the house. And so we know that the Ministry of Education is working very hard to get the schools back open, but we're still restricted by the pandemic, and they're still going to be home for a little longer. We don't want them to not do any schoolwork at home while they're there, and they become the children that cleans the house. How do we work as a team?
It's great that you raised this issue because this is not something that is confined to, you know, pandemic times. A lot of children, and I've worked in teaching for a long time, in education for a long time. A lot of children are made to bear the brunt of the home duties, a lot of times to the point where they're not able to complete their schoolwork. Now, I think I need to make it clear that my view is that children should help around the home. I really do not subscribe to this whole issue of, you have schoolwork, so I'm going to do all the chores. That doesn't make sense to me. Because these children are going to grow into adults who are, you and I know that we have to study, we have to take care of home, we have our full-time jobs, and we have all of these issues that we have to take care of. And we learned that while we were growing up, when we had to sweep the yard and feed the chickens and do all of these things and still bring home good grades. So children should be required to contribute to the upkeep of the family by doing age-appropriate tasks around the home. I think that it should also be done in a way that does not take away from their opportunities to develop themselves educationally. And so children should not be kept home to take care of baby, because baby is not the child's responsibility. Although the child could help with taking care of baby, but that is not the child's responsibility, and so the child should not have to do that to the neglect of his or her schoolwork. And I think that if, as a family, we could sit down and divide up the tasks so that there is some equity, really, then the adults get an opportunity to watch Netflix, and the children get an opportunity to do their schoolwork and to have their own recreation as well, and everything still gets done. All right, so there is, the family could attack the work together. That's how my wife says it. Let's attack this house. And then we attack the house, and when that is done, we then, who wants to watch television, who wants to go up to their room and be on their phones, you do that after the work is finished. And you teach a lot of skills there. Teach time management, you teach cooperative work, but you can't do that if the children doing all the work and you throw back. I think that's a form of bullyism, if you ask me, because you big, and they can't tell you nothing. You just make them do everything. There are some adults who want the remote. It's right there. And they would call that child from out in the yard who's playing, come. And when the child comes, please pass the remote for me. That is not fair, it's not humane. Those kinds of things we have to move away from. And we have to see things from a child's perspective and treat the child the way we would want to be treated. And then at the end of all this, you want a child who can become a productive, contributing member of society. And in today's context, the ability to do that depends largely on your education. And so our children's education should be important. Some of us have, well, maybe all of us in Guyana have limited bandwidth, for example. Children have to take classes online. We must, as the adults, must understand that when the children have to take classes, we can't stream videos. Um, you know, we must make that sacrifice for one another. So we take turns and we plan this and we discuss it. We talk about it. This is how we're going to do it. When your class is finished, then I'll watch my movie or whatever it is. So again, it comes back to where we started, the whole issue of communicating and compromise and cooperation, the three C's. Um, that those elements are important so that everyone is able to live in harmony within our homes.
All in all, we want to promote togetherness, bonding during this period of time in the family. We have talked about some of the constraints or conflicts, I should say, in the family during this period of time. We now want to wrap up this session by sharing some information on getting help. If things are not going the way it is, if you're a neighbor or you're just an observer and you notice that the children are being abused, whatever we have to do, Mr. Campbell, please share some information on help as we wrap up this session.
All right. We don't like to seek help because in order to reach out to someone for help, we have to admit that we don't have things under control. So it takes some humility. In addition to that, we need to understand that we are our brother's keepers. And so sometimes what's going on next door, we convince ourselves that that's not our business. But it is our business. We have to look out for one another. And so if there is an issue, then we need to be, willing to reach out for help for ourselves or on behalf of others. And so there are some agencies that we can call. If there is an issue of child abuse, there is a child protection agency, child care and protection agency, I think it's called. I'm sorry. If you think that an elder is being abused, and an elderly person is being abused, there is a desk that is responsible for that. If I am having difficulty with my personal relationship, there is the Gender Affairs Bureau, which I can call to get help for myself and for my relationship. There is the Domestic Violence Unit at the Ministry of Social Protection, and you can call that unit to get assistance. And then there's always the police, first line of defense. We don't always want to go in that direction, but when it's necessary, then we should do it. And it is best to call them and have the situation diffused at an early stage than to let it get out of hand and then it makes the news for the wrong reasons. So it is important that if you find that you can't manage something on your own, you reach out and you get the help of a professional. That's what professionals are here for.
Thank you very much, Mr. Campbell. We have tried our best within the given period to bring an informational session to you to promote togetherness and bonding during this period of time. As we talked about building positive family relationships. The Department of Social Cohesion, Culture, Youth and Sport will present another episode on this matter, building positive family relationships. Thank you, our viewers and listeners.